Hello, YouTube. It is I, Sneaky Teak, resident broadcast personality, so pleased to be here today for a Storybook Brawl patch notes review. Boom! Storybook Brawl patch 70.6 dropped about a day ago or so, give or take. Link to the patch will be in the description down below if you'd like to follow along on your own or go read up on it. I have read through these patch notes, and I've played just a couple games, but I'm still pretty fresh, so I'm looking forward to doing what is mostly an early review and analysis of the patch notes. I'll read through everything, tell you what it says, give you the developer's thoughts, and also provide some commentary of my own about how I think these might impact the game and meta and how they should impact your play. At least as far as I know. Ultimately, we're all gambling here. We have ideas about how this might turn out, right? As we get through them, please let me know in the comments down below what experience you've had with the patch so far. Is it changing up your game greatly? Is one character shining above the others? Do you think I got something a little bit wrong in terms of how this will impact the game? Let me know. We'll all become better players by learning together. And hey, want to contextualize Storybook Brawl patch with Storybook Brawl gameplay? There'll be a link in the description down below to my Storybook Brawl highlights playlist where you can find many dozens of games, matches of Storybook Brawl that I've played in the past. Check them out. Any games that I put on YouTube are games that I thought were worth sharing, so hopefully you enjoy those. And without further ado, let's dive in. With an immediate qualification, patch 70.6 developer notes. I have no idea if this is meant to be a meme or if this is an accident, but the intro text to patch 70.6 is identical to the intro text to the previous patch 69.0. Check it for yourself. It's copy-pasted directly. My suspicion is that they copy-pasted it when they were doing the entire form, right? They were trying to fill it out and make it all look good, and then they just forgot to change it. So I'll read it, but be it known that I don't think that this is actually a perfect description of what this patch is, but it was a perfect description of the previous patch. Patch notes 70.6. Welcome to patch notes for V70.6. There's a lot of action in this patch, with new characters, treasures, and spells being added, as well as other balance changes, a profile page, the ability to mute emotes, and more. Let's dive in. And then the additional text, which is copy-pasted. Welcome to the patch notes for patch 70.6. There are some impactful changes in this patch, though it's on the smaller side. It's not. Our plan is to have this be a small balance patch that cuts trees down to size while making a few more card changes. It does cut trees down again, so that's true, with a larger content patch coming in the future. We've also got some awesome art changes in feature editions, so be sure to check those out. I think this was the larger patch. It's an honest mistake if it was a mistake, but I really don't know. Okay, right off the bat, a brand new card, Water Wraith. Says, Water Wraith, level 3 evil monster. 3/3, when a character next to me dies, I gain +1/+1 permanently. Presumably upgraded, this becomes +2/+2, and I'm pretty sure it does because I'm pretty sure I saw it in a game. Devs say, Water Wraith adds another positioning puzzle to the mix. If the right characters die, it becomes well hydrated, leaving the opponents in dire straits. So let's talk about this card. It's interesting to me for a few reasons. First of all, this is a level 3 character. Now, the level 2 and 3 character pools haven't been changed much since the game came out. That's been largely untouched, with a few key changes, like Princess White and now King Arthur moving in and out of that position. There have definitely been some changes. Tweedledee used to be a 3, and now they're a level 5, and they're much different than they used to be. But by and large, the lower levels have remained less impacted than the higher levels of characters. Here's a brand new character coming in at level 3. Notably, Water Wraith is an evil monster. Now, we kind of have to look at the patch in its totality, but it's my suspicion that this, along with a bunch of other things, is a soft buff to tokens. When a character next to me dies, means that this character benefits from more characters dying. And the way that more characters die is resummons. Tokens needs this buff. Tokens has been in a bad place, the nail in the coffin being the removal of Sheep and Wolves clothing recently, which is a card that no one was picking anyway, partly because Tokens was such a dead end, but it's gotten a few buffs via either additions of new cards like this, changes of a few cards, and honestly, ultimately, removal of other cards or other nerfs, right? The weaker the meta gets around tokens, the more likely it is to be a substantial force. I think that we'll see Water Wraith hit the board. I think that this is going to be a very snowbally card. Somebody said that this plays a bit like Slay, and I can totally see that. If you get unlucky and your Water Wraith gets picked off in the first couple fights it comes out, you're going to have to throw it in the trash. It's a 3/3. There are level 2 characters that have better stat lines than that. It's just not that big. If it can actually meta scale, then it can stay relevant, but it starts so small that you're gonna need assistance in terms of other things dying, in terms of buffs to this character, maybe in terms of supports, which probably play well. That being said, I can still see this working pretty well, and I expect to see it on quite a few boards, if for no other reason that I think Evil's in a very good place, monsters are in a very good place, and the addition of new relics, including the one that's right down below. So hard to review patch notes when you really need to know the whole thing, and so that's why I took the time for this one to read them beforehand, to make sure that I could give you what I hope is a thorough but also concise exploration of these notes. So, that was Water Wraith. I'm excited to see a new card, a new character, particularly at level 3. Now, a new treasure at level 3. This one is Cursed Throne. It says, Cursed Throne, level 3, treasure. Your royals are also monsters and have Slay +1/+1 permanently. Your royals become more powerful, but at the cost of their humanity. Those that were human, of course. Cursed Throne opens the door to a Royals Monsters crossover and gives more Slay options as well. This treasure is not actually that synergistic with the Water Wraith. And the reason is that if you have Royals, you want them to be big, and if you've taken Cursed Throne, you're attempting to meta-scale your Royals. You want them to grow larger, which means that they're not very effective as neighbors to die off for your Water Wraith. That being said, there is a lot of play here. As we'll see down below, there were some changes to the factionality of some of the royals to align them all as royals. The big one, spoilers, is Queen of Hearts, who's now actually a royal and therefore would benefit from this. Being able to, as an example, metascale Queen of Hearts is a really strong effect, because she tends to be a huge bomb at level 3 and then fall off dramatically, and sometimes to your detriment because you may build your whole board around her. Some cards in Storybook Brawl are like this. They make you really strong, but they encourage you to play so narrow that when they start to fall off, you're really kind of stuck. Queen of Hearts is strong enough that often you would find that you're not stuck, as long as you're buying cards to move forward, buying those Sporkos, buying those good transitional pieces. But I think Cursed Throne is exciting, and I want to see if this is a little bit more support to keep Royals more relevant. This does a few more things. Okay, so think about what kind of Royals you have in the early game where you might be picking up Cursed Throne. Sherwood Sure Shot, one of the few early game Rangers. Having ways to scale ranged characters in Storybook Brawl is a sure shot to being in the top 3. Pun fully intended. One of the difficulties with Sherwood Sure Shot is that her stat line is just really bad. And so if you can't get some extra stats on her, she tends to fall off very quickly. But +1/+1 goes a long way. I think that this and some of the other changes are also soft buffs to Beauty, who will really benefit from being able to dip into the traditionally good royals and traditionally evil monsters with more synergy. I'm excited to see how this plays with some of the support pieces in the early game that can be harder to take. In particular, the level 3 supports, including the Good Witch of the North particularly, can be a little tricky to take because they are so bad on the back line very quickly, right? They are non-ranged, small-statted attackers if they ever get to the point to where they attack. They can be really good stats, but they can become a liability really quickly. Things like Cursed Throne might give them a bit of a leg up as well. This, however, is one of my biggest unknowns. I'm really curious to see how big of an impact this actually has, particularly because of a change that's coming up in a few more cards. With some of the other changes around Slay specifically, I'm not sure yet if this is going to be game defining or if it's just going to be too specific and only show up every once in a while. But it does have 3 keywords on it: Royals, Monsters, and Slay. And usually the more keywords you see, the more chance there is that a thing can really be quite strong. Either too specific or quite strong. I'm giving this one a maybe. I suspect that some boards will go absolutely crazy with this. They'll get lucky and hit Bad Moon and Cursed Throne and have incredible early and mid-game royals and just go completely nuts. But a lot of the times I think this is just going to feel okay. Notably, it doesn't make you stronger immediately when it hits the board, unless you already have an Oni Tyrant. Then it does. That's it, though. Some of the other treasures in the game make you stronger right away. So we'll have to see how this does, but I'm excited to see. Got some new spells in this patch as well. Here's Hermes Magic Beans. Hermes Magic Beans is a level 4 0-cost spell, much like Candy Rain, a level 3 0-cost spell. You attack first this brawl. It's the effect of Hermes Boots, or Sadrak, in a spell. Says, the magic beans are useful if you need to guarantee you attack first, and can also just be cast for free to get your spell count up. Spells that vary in value over the course of the game are the most interesting, and this certainly qualifies. I've been playing more Cursed King lately, and it's taught me one thing, which is that it's really just good to be consistently casting spells. You're leaving so much value on the table if you don't find opportunities to get a spell cost off on most turns. There are exceptions. Some characters are so married to rolling and trying to buy certain characters. As an example, the hero that comes to mind immediately is Miri. Miri can't afford to be buying tons of spells because Miri needs to be hitting royals in order to power spike, right? There are other examples of this to where you just do so much better by buying characters, but for most heroes, by the way, I'm sure that I miss up characters, heroes, and units in this game get mixed in my head. I've played hundreds of hours of Storybook Brawl, and characters and heroes get mixed up all the time for me, so apologies if I've done that. Sorry for the confusion. Yeah, most heroes want to cast spells, if they can, and I like having more zero-cost spells. It gives you little bits of incremental benefit, and it sets you up as an example for Storm King, which is a big deal. Oftentimes, hitting level 6 and being able to buy a Storm King that's in your shop and have enough stats on it to win a fight is the difference between like a 4th or a 3rd and a 2nd. Because the game continues to be very fast. Level 6 just doesn't last that long, and so I like casting spells because it gives you one more immediate power boost that you could potentially get at level 6. Literally, that's enough reason for me as Storm King. I'm excited to see this played. This is also a little soft buff to Slay, which Slay will need because of a reason that's coming up. I can't believe there's a card below us that I can't believe they didn't put right in the beginning. I mean, it's really the biggest part of the entire update, but we'll get there. I'm trying desperately. I don't want to spoil it. I don't want to spoil it. Okay. Blaze of Glory. Another spell. Level 4, 2-cost spell. Give character plus 10 attack this brawl. Says Lancelot just got another friend, with Blaze of Glory helping win fights, increase slay odds, and give the lucky few who have Hatball another targeted spell. Wow, that's another spell that makes slay a little stronger and that feeds into royals. It's curious. Why are there all of these little soft buffs to slay and to royals? Well, royals have kind of been struggling. That's one reason, but what's going on exactly with slay? I just want to make one note about this card because I do love it. If I'm recognizing art correctly, this is the legendary cover art character from the main splash screen of Storybook Brawl. One of the common questions that I get is, who's that character supposed to be? Now, the legend that I've heard is that this was initial early art for Brave Princess, who ended up looking like something very different entirely. Cool to see this character being used in more places. I love the design of this character, and I was kind of sad that they're in the very beginning art of Storybook Brawl and never make it in, so it's cool to see them showing up, at least in a spell. Okay. Card changes. Some royal stuff. And this was one thing that I was referring to. Says all princes, princesses, and queen are now type royal. It's weird to me that Court Wizard is in the picture list here. I guess maybe that's to help clarify that Court Wizard is not a royal, but continues to be a strong royal support. Says we decided to consolidate all of these types into one, which makes text boxes more efficient and makes more sense flavor-wise. We had some outliers like Queen of Hearts, who should definitely count for cards that impact royals, and now does. Okay, first of all, this means that there are now more royals than there were before, because Queen of Hearts was previously a queen and had no synergies with any of the other royal combinations. Now she does. Court Wizard is activated by... Oh, that's why Court Wizard's here, because it used to say when one of your princes or princesses is attacked and killed, and it now says royals. So she's now a royal, so she gets that synergy. She gets the synergy with the new Cursed Throne, and she gets the synergy with the changed Lonely Prince. Lonely Prince now says when you buy another royal, I transform into a 5/5 Frog Prince. As a result of the type update, Lonely Prince no longer needs to find a princess, but any royal, excluding other copies of himself, and that wouldn't make much sense. Lonely Prince is now correctly labeled and identified as bi or pansexual. Congratulations, Lonely Prince, on getting to live your truest self. This is such a nice change. It was super annoying that you bought Lonely Prince and the only thing that could wake them up was Cinderella, Sherwood Sure Shot, and then I guess at level 3 with the addition of Ogre Princess, that was really helpful. But remember, there used to be other princesses that got removed, like Princess P, who's no longer in the game, and Princess Peep, who's in the game, but when are you taking Princess Peep? Like, other than on Geppetto, right? It's pretty hard to take that character. And so, I don't know, it's just a simplifying change. It didn't need to be only princesses anyway, and this just makes it all fit together very nicely. So I like the royal changes. Anything that takes a monotonically increasing complexity space and knocks it down a peg is a change that I'm at least in favor of looking at. I think that one of the biggest problems in modern living game design, and what I mean by that is games that are updated live, particularly multiplayer games, but even like roguelikes, look no further than Binding of Isaac. A problem that happens is that in order to continue adding to the game, in order to continue making it feel like the game is improving, the game expands. More keywords, more items, cognitive space increases. In the long run, to the detriment of the game. Because part of what made the game good initially was a manageable, accessible space of complexity. Deep enough that you feel like you're making tough decisions, but also constrained enough that you're actually able to move around in that decision space. I think it's good when cards get removed. I think it's good when relics get removed. And when keywords get simplified, that's pretty good too. Because more things are going to get added to the game over time. So you want to make sure that you keep smoothing out that substrate, right? So I love this. It seems like a small change, but things like this will go a long way towards maintaining a really interesting and sustainable game in the long run. Okay, some name and type changes. Oni King, I see you, is now Oni Tyrant. Storm King is now Scion of the Storm. Great Pumpkin King is now the Great Pumpkin. Prince Arthur is now King Arthur. So things that were not actually royals have had royal-like words removed from their name. And Prince Arthur has been made into King Arthur because, I don't know, they felt like it. Probably to make it clear that this is a really key piece for newer players in terms of expanding your royal court, as it were. And now some interesting factional changes. Copycat is now, an animal mage. I've talked about this on stream so many times. Copycat looks and feels like it's an animal mage, but it's actually not, historically. It was an animal, which means that it wasn't actually getting empowered by your mage synergies. As an example, Aeon was not going to power up Copycat, but now it is a mage. In most cases, this won't make a huge difference, but this does certainly empower Copycat Monster Book a bit beyond what it was. And to be frank, when you finish looking through the rest of the things in this patch note, I think you will agree with me that Aeon is about in the best place it's ever been in. Aeon had a tough time many patches ago. Aeon's actually been changed substantially. Aeon didn't used to have a built-in hat effect with the whole slay reduce the cost of spells. That's fairly new as of something like 10 or 12 patches ago. Aeon is, I think, in this patch at the strongest point that it's ever been. And I'm excited to get to talk about that as we go further. Speaking of, Baba Yaga is now an evil monster mage, and Bearstain is now a good animal mage. Okay. Devs say, beside the Royals type change, we cleaned up a few different names and types. Prince Arthur got a promotion, and Oni, Pumpkin, and Storm Kings got their names changed to something a little less royal to avoid that confusion. We're also adding Mage to a few characters that fit the profile, and can't wait to see the Aeon Bearstain mashups. I don't think Aeon Bearstain mashup is going to happen very often. I hate to break it to you. That's pretty niche. At the point to where you have a really strong Aeon board online, you should just stay mages. And at the point that you have a really strong tokens board online, it's going to be pretty hard to splash Aeon effectively. I think even with this change, we're not going to see a lot of mage tokens. I'm just going to put that out there. I'd love to see it. I hope we can set it up. I hope I get to put a Mage Tokens game on YouTube because it will be interesting and unique. What's really key here is the 2 other Mage editions and the increase in the total Mage pool overall. Baba Yaga is a support that gives you multiple applications of Slay. It's not unlikely that a board will exist where we can put a Baba Yaga behind an Aeon. And now Aeon can power up the Baba Yaga. That used to be the downside. You really had to put Lady of the Lake, and other mage supports in the back line behind your Aeon. Now you've got one more that actually further empowers their skill. So I'm excited to see that matchup specifically, the Mage Baba Yaga. I think of all of the Mage changes, that's actually the one that I'm most excited to play out. But Copycat will get some play. Okay, it's time to do the big one. I made you wait this long. This is it. I think the biggest change in the patch. And there's a lot of stuff in this patch, but really it's this. Grimsoul Cut. This is a change we've made before, say the devs, and once again, Grimsoul finds itself on the chopping block. Ultimately, Grimsoul removes more tension and drama from the game than we'd like, by guaranteeing slays rather than making you work for them. It made slay builds quite consistent, which is counter to the intent of the mechanic, and we're excited to see the landscape without Grimsoul doing its thing. I'll note that this leaves Slay as a whole balanced around a card that no longer exists, so we will be taking a good look at all the Slay cards for future balance patches. As a minor note, Trophy Hunter wasn't the driving force behind the Grimsoul change, but we don't mind the hopeless Trophy Hunter endgames showing up less often as a result. All of a sudden, sorry for the fast scroll, the addition of Cursed Throne giving more Slay play, Hermes Magic Beans giving more Slay play, Blaze of Glory giving more Slay play. It all makes sense. Even in this patch right away, they're trying to add a fair bit of soft buffs to Slay to try to help make up for the fact that realistically, the entire mechanic has been, since the beginning of the game, balanced around this card. This card. And it's really also this card in conjunction with Baba Yaga, but it's this card. The reason that Grimsoul is so deeply impactful is manyfold. First of all, it's very good at its job, which is to die. This character, whose job is to die, has 1 health, making them very good at dying. If you have Ring of Meteors, something that you'll actually see very often in these setups, and a pretty takeable relic because of its play with Darkwood Creeper and Trees line throughout the game, if you have Ring of Meteors, you automatically killed your Grimsoul, which means you're already proccing Slay effects before the fight even begins. That's not uncommon for heroes that want to do this and for boards that care. Also, Grimsoul is a 5/1, which is well below basic stat line, but 5 does contribute to the game. If your Slay is behind, as in behind stat-wise, then Grimsoul can help them catch up. And you can even hide a key Slay on the back line. This was a very common play, putting a Polywoggle or a Brave Princess on the back line and just letting Grimsoul feed them their Slay. And here's the key, once your Slay gets caught up or even ahead of the curve, Grimsoul still accelerates them. Realistically, nobody wants to run a 4 or 5 Slay board. That's pretty rare. Sometimes in the deep end game with Jormungand, but generally you've only got 2, maybe? Sometimes 1, sometimes 3 Slay pieces that you're really trying to consistently activate. Much more than that, and it's just too hard to make it happen. Position 1 is very likely to attack, but as you move towards position 4 in the front line, you have rapidly diminishing chances of landing an attack, because you will tend to be attacked first. And Slay from the back line is iffy at best. It's just asking for inconsistency, especially in the meta that contains really incredible effects like lightning dragons and mummies. Anything you put in the back line just might not get a chance to play. So your Slay really wants to be in the front, and it wants to be in the first few positions. Grimsoul lets that Slay catch up, and then also continues to rocket it forward, and as they noted, ridiculous synergies with things like Trophy Hunter. Okay. I think that this is a massive nerf to Slay. I don't think that you have to be Sherlock Holmes to feel that way. I don't think this is not a hot take. This is not Five Brain. Without Grimsoul, Slay will be in the game less. Period. But I don't think that it's a knockout. Some of this I can say anecdotally, having played some games and seen some top 3 Slay finishes. Because without Grimsoul, the pressure on Slay goes down quite a bit. The units just won't be drafted out of the pool as often. There continue to be ways to get Slay set up early and really benefit. If you happen to hit something like Bad Moon at level 3 and you're in a position to take it, and if you happen to find something like a Masquerade Ball or a True Love's Kiss to get, say, a Lancelot early, you're still pretty incentivized to try to Slay. That unit is just going to become so big, especially once it's upgraded. It's going to do pretty well for you. And as I said, actually, with Lightning Dragons, having something in the front line, which is very strong, is not always so bad. Lightning Dragons continue to be incredible tech to take, right? So I think that Slay is down but not completely out. I don't think it's going to be a consistent top 2 meta like it's been for the last few patches, but Jormungand continues to be one of the highest potential endgame units. The ability of Jormungand to scale up stats is the kind of character that can define the difference between a top 2 and a first place finish, right? And so people will still attempt to Slay and will often be successful. It's just not going to feel so guaranteed as it was in the presence of Grimsoul, and I think that's good. But I would expect to see Slay patched to be buffed over the next few patches, and as they do, I wouldn't be surprised to see Jormungand get some attention, because when Slay becomes too consistent, Jormungand becomes way too strong, right? So I'm really curious to see where this goes, but I'm mostly positive about this. I really think that Slay is supposed to be a major risk, because of how much it depends on the outcome of fights rather than the outcome of shops and of macro decision making. So this is, in my eyes, quite a good change. Okay, from here, it's a few more things, including some changes that cut trees down to size a little more. Some level 5 and 6 swaps. Fire the missiles! I'm Sean Connery, and these are the level 5 and 6 swaps. Okay, Burning Tree was a level 5, it's now a level 6, and they made it a 420. Hee hee. Good meme. Okay, Robinwood was a level 6, and it's now a level 5, and they actually changed something. It's hard to see in this very small card, but Robinwood was changed from give the strongest enemy minus 15 attack and your weakest character plus 15 attack to minus 7 plus 7. So they chopped the support effect of Robinwood in half, but they kept Robinwood's base stat line of 710 the same and moved him to level 5. Also, 3 Big Pigs moved from level 6 to level 5 with some stat nerfs to match. Instead of a 15-15, it's a 9-9, and instead of 3-5-5 pigs, it makes 3-3-3s. This is what the devs say. I'm bundling these 3 changes together because they are all part of the same plan. The goal here is to seed the level 5 character pool with more powerful options that don't push you down just one path. That's not to say that Big Pigs or Robinwood won't end up in Animals/Treants respectively, but buying them on 5 doesn't pressure you to only end up in those comps. Additionally, moving 3 Big Pigs to 5 does bolster Animals, which is a comp that needed a little bit more power. Burning Tree moves up to 6 to make room, and to avoid the problem of buying Burning Tree on 5 and feeling forced into Treants while getting more appropriate stats. Okay. Few takes, and these are real takes that might impact your gameplay. These are takes about the meta and takes about consistency. I don't think that this change will consistently turn tokens into a first place, a crown. And the reason is that tokens are needy. You cannot take a first place with animal tokens unless you have Bear Stain. And really, even 1 Bear Stain is not enough. You probably need an upgraded Bear Stain or 1.5 Bear Stains, right? An upgraded one and an unupgraded one. You need the things like Ambrosia. And you tend to need strong stat buffs, things like Singing Swords or really strong support units. In the presence of the right treasures and in Bear Stain, you can absolutely take a crown with animal tokens. But I wouldn't count on it for consistency. in taking first. But if you're laddering, I think that you should consider drafting into animal tokens more often. If you're playing tight, you're probably taking things like Sporko in the mid-game anyway. You are hopefully maintaining as much health as possible. And now that 3 Big Pigs is at 5, it's easier than ever to slap a few summons on the front board, like Baby Bear and 3 Big Pigs, that can really take advantage of your bonus stat effects. This will be strong enough to get you to a top 3. And if you are consistently taking a top 3 in Storybook Brawl, you're climbing really, really fast. Up until you're quite deep into Mythic, right? And so I think that we should consider being more open to tokens as a consistency play for top 3. But that we shouldn't look to it as a consistency play for taking advantage of a strong position to take first. I probably need to do another video about this, but these are kind of 2 different game realities, and you need to constantly be checking in with your match to see where you're at. If you are at level 5.2 with 40 health, you should be making decisions to take first, right? You have done an excellent job preserving your health throughout the entire match. You're in a strong position in the lobby. Don't take things that will consistently give you a top 4. You already took a top 4. Half of the lobby's already dead. What can you buy? What can you roll for? What can you take that might get you first? In those cases, mostly, I'm not about to go animal tokens because it's too thin. I want to play more open to consistent in-games, like trying to force out some mage treasures or, you know, getting some treants online. Treants are down, but they're not out. Trust me, they're still very, very strong. There's a lot of consistency still. If you see the bear stain, maybe now you're thinking about it, right? I'm very excited about the addition of Robin Wood to level 5. I actually love Robin Wood at level 5 because frankly, that's where I was most excited for Robin Wood anyway. At level 5, the support effect is huge, particularly knocking one of the opponent's characters down a little bit. I frequently had games to where Robin Wood was the singular difference between losing horribly and winning a fight because, as an example, it nerfed the enemy's hippocampus attack a little bit. Basically, their whole board was a hungry hippocampus, and so it got cut down to size. And Robin Wood is a really strong synergy piece with Good Boy, who tends to have small stats, but with a little attack can be very effective and really wants to be buffing allied good rangers. Robin Wood being a good treant, right? So I'm very excited to see Robin Wood at 5. I've already picked and played this character at 5. I think this is an excellent placement. And Burning Tree at 6 makes a lot of sense to me. Trees now have it tougher than ever because they really want Burning Tree, Echo Wood, and Ashwood. Those are all level 6s, which means it's harder than it has been to get into the trees package at the end. Talk about a narrow set of synergies. I've done it. Look forward to the game on YouTube. You'll see how I did it. But I think that this is going to be more reserved than ever now for characters who are accelerating. Heroes. God! Heroes who are accelerating. Either through effects like being able to buy a bunch of level ups so that they have more time to get these high level characters. Maybe they're Pan's Shadow. Maybe you're Zelwa, so you can afford to buy a bunch of level 6s, right? It's going to take a lot of economy now to find and set up end-game trees. But if you set them up, they're just as strong as they were before, right? The stat line is still going to be as crazy as it was. You just can't start building it at level 5 like you could do in patch 69, and you won't feel as forced into it as you were with Burning Tree at 5. I'm very, very favorable towards these changes. Across the board, I think they're super fun. Okay. Did I read this? I'm going to read this again. I'm bundling these 3 changes together because they're all part of the same plan. The goal here is to seed the level 5 character pool with more powerful options that don't push you down just one path. That's not to say that Big Pigs or Robin Wood won't end up in Animals or Treants respectively, but buying them on 5 doesn't pressure you to only end up in those comps. Additionally, moving 3 Big Pigs to 5 does bolster Animals, which is a comp that needed a little more power. Burning Trees moves up to 6 to make room, and to avoid the problem of buying Burning Tree on 5 and feeling forced into Treants while getting more appropriate stats. The developer's take here is almost identical to mine. I mean, this is exactly it. This is what it is. I love these changes. Other changes. Doubly now is a 2-2 at base instead of a 1-1. Friendly Spirit is a 3-4, and Ogre Princess is a 4-2. Each of these units got 1 or 2 points of buff. Says these are all characters who we felt could use a little more oomph, so they've all gotten a boost in stats. Slay away, Ogre Princess. Very cool. Time Flies moved from a level 5 to level 4 with a small stat nerf. They say mostly as a way to balance numbers, but truthfully, I think this is also partly because hitting time flies at level 5 almost always felt like a pretty rough miss. If you, as an example, True Love Kissed an upgraded unit, or you had a Polywoggle land a slay and become a time flies, it often felt really bad. Sometimes it was okay because you had good supports, so you could get some decent stats out of it, but compared to the rest of the level 5 pool, it was a little lackluster unless you really were doing tokens things and you had the right tokens treasures at that point. I like time flies at 4, especially with Baby Bear and 3 Big Pigs at 5. And then one of the cooler changes of this patch, Cupid, evil, previously good. Don't let his chubby little face fool you. Cupid is as evil as they come. Making him evil is an upgrade to the Great Pumpkin, as it adds yet another scam option to the pool of evil characters. I love this. It does slightly nerf Good Boy, which sounds a little weird, but Cupid was an incredible companion to Good Boy, because if Cupid didn't get the Good Boy stats, it did a lot of work against the enemy board, and if it did get the Good Boy stats, it was a good ranger, right? And so this is a bit of a soft nerf to Good Boy, actually. But I think Evil Cupid makes a lot of sense in maintaining factional consistency, like thematic consistency. And also, I love the fact that you can now have a level 6 evil die on a Great Pumpkin board and have it turn into a Cupid. That's an incredible level 5 hit. And in general, I think that Pumpkin should have a lot of incredible level 5 hits. It already has very scammy Rotten Apple Tree, it has some range, like Baba Yaga, and now it has more range and more scam in Cupid, so I think this change is great. Cupid is an interesting character because usually Cupid was something that when you bought it, you really needed it, and it was solving a specific problem. It was kind of a tech piece to solve part of your enemy matchup, but often you bought them and you really only needed them for a round or two, and then they became obsolete as the enemy got out of the setup, which was so vulnerable to Cupid. Not always. And so lots of times this was a 5 gold buy that was basically a spell. You used it for a match or two, or rather a brawl or two, and then it was no longer on your board. I think that on Evil it has more chances to stick around just because of how synergistic it is with what you would be doing in in-game Evil, so that's nice. Fireball got a little bit of a nerf. Fireball to 3 damage, used to be 4. Said Fireball felt like too much of a must-buy spell in the mid-game and routinely wrecked even strong boards. Moving the damage down to 3 mitigates that and makes it more of a decision whether to snap off Fireball when you see it. Hey, fun fact, I have always thought that Fireball was 3 damage. I don't know why. I've observed consistently that it's 4. I have cast it for 4 and watched it do 4 damage. I have even gotten a little health on a character to get them out of range of a Fireball death. But in my mind, it was always 3. I have no idea why. And so I like it at 3 because now I don't have to fix my understanding of the game. I think this change is just fine. Mimic from level 5 to level 6, another interesting change. Mimic is one of the best treasures when it has the right friends, and led to some of the more unbeatable boards a little too often. Bumping it to 6 retains the dream of fun combos, though at a much lower frequency. I think that part of the reason that Mimic was too strong at level 5 was Nyan. The entire level 5 treasure pool has to be balanced around Nyan. Level 5 treasures are, hilariously, some of the easiest to hit. Really. One of the few cases where you can consistently get a treasure with only 2 characters and only 10 gold. And so it was not that hard to get a look at Mimic, and when you did, you often wanted to take it, because it's going to make your early game treasure stronger and it's going to set you up for very, very strong end games. Mimic at 6 is tough, because you're choosing it over level 6 treasures. You might really need to take something like the Phoenix Feather in that case that powers you up right away. And so I like Mimic at 6 because it makes tougher decisions. I think that when Mimic showed up in my level 5 treasure pool, it was like a 75% pick rate or something. I took it over the other 2 treasures so consistently it's hilarious. I mean, it was very, very rare to take the other 2 treasures over the Mimic, and so this change makes sense to me. Singing Sword. Nerf buff? Mostly nerf. Your front row characters have plus 15 attack. It's now a set amount. It used to be they are doubled in attack. Devs say Singing Sword has been the best level 6 treasure for quite some time and was one of the biggest culprits when it came to attack numbers you had no hope of surviving. This change pulls back the power level significantly, especially with treants, while giving the Great Pumpkin and animal builds a treasure they can make good use of. Okay, this is really funny because for some boards, this is a buff. Imagine you're playing a bunch of, as an example, small tokens. Singing Sword is way better if you've got a black cat and a Princess Peep than the previous version was, right? That being said, once you get the Bear Stain on board, which you're going to want anyway, it starts to fall off very quickly. This is mostly a nerf, but I do also think it's a very fair nerf. In general, multiplicative bonuses are something that becomes very hard to balance, right? I'm looking at you know, Catalyst for Poison and Slay the Spire, or Singing Swords, or remember when there used to be a treasure in Storybook Brawl that said if you lock a Treant in the shop, its health doubles? Like, people created some hilarious boards with that treasure, and so yeah, I'm not really surprised to see Singing Swords changed. The more I think about it, the more I think that Singing Swords really was the best level 6, because whenever I thought of something that I thought might be better, like Phoenix Feather, it was probably better because you already had a Singing Swords, right? And so I think that this change is very fair. Still very takeable, by the way. It's still a good treasure. You can absolutely take this and derive a ton of benefit from it. It's just not as insta-pick, perhaps, as it was before, and it's limited in its end-game massive scaling upside, right? And then the last treasure change, Embiggening Stone, from level 2 and 3 characters in your shop have plus 15/15 to characters in your shop have plus 10/10. Okay, let me just read the dev notes and then I'll tell you what I think. Dev says, Embiggening Stone was by far the least picked level 6 treasure, and for good reason. Most games, by the time you found it, you were no longer interested in buying low-level characters. This change still makes it a powerful pick when you find it early, via Treasure Map or Horde Dragon, while giving it utility even later in the game. This has been a fun change, and I can't wait to get to play more with it. I think that the old Embiggening Stone was one of the strongest treasures in the game, and I took it very frequently, even late. And the reason is, plus 15/15 on level 2s and 3s can very easily contribute towards at least a top 3 finish, and at most a ludicrously powerful top position crowning board. Because it's not just plus 15/15, is it? It's actually plus 15/15 multiple times. If you take 3 copies of a level 2 or 3, the resulting upgraded unit has plus 45/45. A plus 45/45 Ranger is obscene even at level 6. You don't need to be a level 6 character for that to be very, very good. Plus 45/45 Polywoggle just won you the game because you now have a plus 45/45 upgraded level 6 character that you bought for only 6 gold total, right? I think that the previous Embiggening Stone had a ton of play, even very late in the game, and took it pretty frequently to really strong outcomes. If it showed up and you were already so strong that you didn't need plus 15/15 level 2 and 3 units, then you just didn't take it. And so, as in many cases, I'm surprised to see that this was low pick rate, because I think it's actually really, really good. That being said, all of that being said, having said that I think it was really strong and that it didn't necessarily need to change, I do actually really like this change. I really like characters in your shop have plus 10/10. The ability to take an Embiggening Stone and this just immediately buy a good boy is really cool, right? And so I think that this simplifies it to this relic is good when you're planning to buy shop characters, instead of this relic is good if you're ready to play some really frenzied turns where you rotate your whole board to level 2s and level 3s. Because that was the cost of the previous Embiggening Stone. When you took it, you needed to be prepared for some really high APM turns. Not quite mage, right? Not quite Hatball Fork, but really fast, because you need to be rolling and buying 2s and 3s. You need to have a good idea which 2s and 3s are very strong to take. You need to know about your doublies and your Spellweavers and your Sherwood Sure Shots, and you need to know about your Polywoggles. You need to know about key supports, and you need to be ready to make very fast decisions to take advantage of the treasure, so that you can use it to gain momentum, to recover any position that you've lost, and then to surge ahead. I think the newer one will be easier to play around because it's more flexible to people's playstyle, right? You can continue to play into your level 4, 5s, and 6s, and you'll just do fine. This also makes it open to Pan's Shadow, which is a really small thing, but it's an exciting thing, I think, right? I like it when treasures are generally open to heroes. And so, yeah, this change is interesting to me. It made a lot of sense flavor-wise to me before, and I really enjoyed playing around it, but 10/10 is still big, and now it's much more flexible. So overall, I like this change, but I will miss getting to do things like seeing a shop full of level 3s and casting Masquerade Ball to turn them into +15/+15 level 4s. There was really clever stuff that you could do with the previous one, and so some of the tech here is lost, but I think the game is improved overall because of it. Okay, those are all of the major card additions and changes and rebalances. From here, it's some feature additions, art, and bug fixes, which I will read through for the sake of completion, but that's most of the changes on the cards front. And y'all, I hope you've enjoyed this YouTube exclusive patch notes review so far. I did do a patch notes review on Twitch, which you can check out if you'd like on my Twitch channel, but I wanted to do one here, which was more catered towards the YouTube experience, a little bit more thought out and a little bit more concise, so that you know you got a good dense experience with the patch notes. So appreciate you coming by, and I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you haven't, consider liking the video and hitting the subscribe button so you can see more content like this on the channel. Okay. Just a couple more things on the way out. Feature additions, they added profiles. Something like this has been something that I've been doing with a little mod called SBB Tracker for quite some time. This is a third-party mod built mostly by Rashi and a few other people who've contributed to like the battle simulations. I'll add a link to it down below. It's a really fantastic mod and I still run it, but I love seeing more stats tracking in the actual game. Most people are not going to go out and install a bunch of third-party add-ons for playing Storybook Brawl. The more that you can allow people to look at and analyze their gameplay and appreciate a legacy of gameplay, the more complete the experience gets. So I love this. Dev said profile is here. Now you can see your last several casts of characters, treasures, and how well you did. Your final cast is recorded for practice games, group games, and ranked games. Since patch 69.0, we've worked on recording who your winningest hero is, how many times you've been in the top 4, and what your current number of first places is. Have thoughts on what we should add? Tell us in our Discord server feedback channel or on Twitter. And also, you can now mute emotes in-game, which is just like generally a good feature to have. Couple bug fixes and improvements. It says fixed a bug where if an effect would change the alignment of the character, that character would be unable to be targeted by another alignment spell within the same turn. I never ran into this bug, but that's really fascinating. So like if you Beauty's Influence an evil character to make them good, and then you try to cast Shard of the Ice Queen, you can't or something? Or maybe, yeah, I don't know. This is fascinating, but cool. Upgraded Doubly is now correctly named Triply. I thought that it was on purpose that they changed it to Doubly, and I think it might have been temporarily when they were changing some of the netcode, but cool that Triply's back. Awoken Princess's art is no longer stretched. That's been in the game since like last June. And finally fixed a bug where the hitbox for the treasure select was too big. There you go. That is Storybook Brawl patch 70.6. I think at a high level, right? So we've done a read through. What's my overall meta analysis? I think that mages are probably stronger than they've ever been. And mages have always been strong. So no better time than now to try to play very open to mage lines and mage treasures. I think Aeon is incredible right now. I'm not really sure how much stronger Royals got, and I'm curious to see if people can consistently top 3 with Royals. I don't really know. I do think that they're slightly buffed, but I'm not necessarily seeing enough here that they're just going to consistently slam a top 2 finish or something. I'm still iffy on that front. I think Evils are in a better position than they've been, and I'm really excited to see boards that take good advantage of Water Wraith. I think Slay overall is very substantially nerfed, but will still be in the game at least when people can set up, say, Jormungand, because it's one of the best ways to scale in-game stats if you can, right? And I think that some of the side buffs to Slay will help, like Hermes Magic Beans. And I think that Treants are down, but far from out. They're just economically challenging to get access to, which means that you're more encouraged than ever to take economy in the form of things like Fool's Gold. You're more encouraged than ever to hit level up spells and to play an early game where you're able to hit level up spells, because it's much easier to build Burning Tree, Ashwood, Echo Wood if you hit level 6 early and you have the economy to do it. I still expect to see very many top 3 finishes for Treants, but it won't feel as railroaded as it did before. Overall, I'm very positive about the patch. I've had a good time with the couple games that I played, and I look forward to sharing some of those games here on YouTube. So hopefully you look forward to those in the Storybook Brawl Highlights playlist. That being said, that's going to be it for me, folks. I hope you had a good time with the patch review. Like I said, leave me a comment down below if you think there are things that I missed, if you've been having experiences with the game that you think are interesting. Do you think Cursed Throne is a really big impact, or it's just totally too thin? I really want to know what kind of an experience you've been having and what's working for you in your games. Let me know. Until next time, though, that's it from me, folks. From my home to yours, from me, from Kevin, and from Bevan, nothing but love. Have a wonderful night or day, wonderful time zone, whatever time this video went live, and a fantastic rest of your week to come. Peace.